GM, GA, GE, wherever you may be. Today on Lucky Trader Lounge, we welcome the Storyverse team. Patrick from Storyverse is going to be here talking how they are taking your NFTs and creating stories out of them. Welcome. So as mentioned, we have Patrick here from Storyverse team. So I guess let's start with what your role is on the team and how you came across this project.
Lou Dog, super nice to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation. I'm Patrick. It's wonderful to be here. I work at Playco and I run BD and partnerships there. It's a little bit of corp dev as well. I was brought over to Playco about a year ago now by a guy named Justin Waldron. Justin had founded a company called Zynga, which ultimately now is, you could argue, is the largest mobile video game company in the world. And he said, hey, what do you think about moving over from Facebook, where I had been working on a bunch of media partnerships, games partnerships, esports, etc. And I said, well, I've never worked at a game developer. I can't imagine why you would want me to join the team. And he said, well, we're cooking up some really interesting things in Web3. So I said, cool, all right. And that's the rest is history.
Yeah. So were you part of, or at least invested in NFTs before that? I see that you have an NFT shirt on right now. So is that something that you are already pretty passionate about?
It was new territory for me, to be honest with you, Ludog. So this shirt, there are two of these in the world. My 8-year-old had a birthday, and so I thought it would be pretty cool to give him the first ever Bored Ape, for this particular Bored Ape, to get him a T-shirt. And while I was making it, I said, this is pretty cool. I'll snag one of these for myself. So no, Web3 for me was a pretty new thing. Justin had been advising Decentraland and Dapper Labs as far back as CryptoKitties and then Immutable X. And he's really been just a fantastic mentor for me as we've moved deeper and deeper into Web3, in particular with the Storyverse.
Yeah, so let's get into the Storyverse a little bit, because I know some of our viewers might have no idea what it is at all. So from more of a high level, what is Storyverse, how you're connecting NFTs?
Storyverse it's a publishing platform, and it's for folks who own NFTs and who want to bring them to life. So if we look at the NFT space now, you say many of them are 2D characters created by fantastic artists. And for now, a reasonable amount of times, folks have said, these are really interesting projects, but let's start thinking a little bit further along. Where is the utility going to come from? Obviously, the game industry is an obvious place. And we thought, we've spent a lot of time building instant games in the Web 2 world and bringing characters to life through rigging and animation, delivering personalities to them in some instances. And so we said, this is a really applicable platform, the Storyverse platform. You take an NFT, you add some arms and some legs, some personality, and voila, potentially you have the next Peppa Pig, the next Bart Simpson. And so we started to talk about this with a couple of PFP projects, and they thought, this is really interesting. And Justin and I looked at each other and we said, I think we may have product market fit here. And so we said, let's fast forward this 12 months. We could theoretically have 12 or 18 stories with some of these blue chip projects, or the emerging projects, or the projects that are particularly invested in the creation of lore. That could be 18 stories. And the light bulb went off and we said, 18 stories is pretty cool, but wouldn't it be cooler if it were 1 million? And so the way you get from 18 to 1 million is basically you create scalable tools and let anyone who owns a PFP create a story with their character, or a combination of their characters, or a combination of their character and some friends' characters, etc. And so we are really excited about opening up opportunities for people to express themselves, to bring their characters to life, and usher in what we think sort of could be considered like the next iteration of the creator economy.
Yeah, so is it more along the lines of someone comes to you and says they want to create like a lore of their character, or I know you guys have been partnering with some different PFP projects themselves. So is it generally you want that one person to come to you with their idea, or are you guys creating an idea for them? How's that side work?
That's a really good question. And the way in which you'll see it happening now is not necessarily the way it will be in 6 months. So, initially, what we're doing is, first of all, I should note that there's this concept of a plot, and the plot is really, the analogy would be a piece of a land in Decentraland or in Sandbox. And so on the x-axis, there are these plots of land, and they sit next to each other, almost as though you were turning pages of a book in the Storyverse. And each of these plots are NFTs, so folks can buy them. And folks who buy an NFT, a plot, are then able to take advantage of publishing tools, tools that allow them to make a story with their NFT. So the ability to programmatically rig and animate their PFP character or characters, the ability to add caption bubbles, edit text, change backgrounds, add props, the ingredients that you would want to create some sort of, I wouldn't say simplistic, but a basic cartoon, something akin to what you would see on South Park, and over time, of course, or Bart Simpson or Peppa Pig, and over time, of course, getting more sophisticated. And so what we've done now is the platform it's built, the tools are being used by our own internal teams. And so there's a pretty significant effort happening right now where we're taking the tools that our own team is using to create these stories. Yesterday we launched the CryptoPunks Enter the Storyverse. We have a Bored Apes store Enter the Storyverse. And we have other stories coming out as well. Those are created by our team, and the idea is to seed the ecosystem with examples, best practices, examples, case studies, so that the audience and the community becomes aware of what's possible and the tools, and they start to see the fruits of what these tools will eventually allow them to do.
Yeah, so it's more like what you have already done are stories that you guys have created, but long term, it's for the users to be able to. So, how can our viewers, listeners get involved? Is there a drop setup that's going to be happening soon? Is there, are they getting connected in other ways?
So we've been, for the past couple weeks, we've been doing a series of whitelist collaborations, entry list collaborations, to enter the Storyverse, and we've teamed up um, officially with several projects, sometimes unofficially. When we start to see in our Discord, there's communities that just organically pop up, we start to offer entry list opportunities for them. And so we're trying to think as creatively as possible how to distribute entry list opportunities for folks, because we want as many communities represented at the table when we have our Genesis Mint, which is Fordland, which is coming up in the next several weeks. The date isn't exactly nailed down, but it's sometime in April.
Okay, so that's what people should basically be looking out for, is the land sale, so to speak. And land is hot right now. Just the idea of it in metaverse as well. Do you envision this going to be able to connect with other metaverses beyond like just projects? I know you'd mentioned Decentraland earlier.
So we love the idea of interoperability. There's no doubt about that, and we think that being able, it's just part of the Web3 ethos, right? And so, taking your two-dimensional PFP character that lives in the Storyverse and being able to bring it over to a Web3 project, right? Or Sandbox is something that we think is a really trick way. It's just a wonderful thing to bring to communities. Some of the technical issues associated with it require some serious work. We love what Deadfellas project has done. If you think about, the ability they offer a pixelated Deadfellow, they offer a chibi, they offer a traditional 3D Deadfellow. That level of meta wrap, sort of the approach to meta wrapping, is really cool. We love that, and it certainly is something that we like to think about. So interoperability it's not quite clear when that comes to reality in the Storyverse, or how we plug into other metaverses, but it's an aspiration for sure.
Yeah. And then I know one thing that it comes up a lot in NFTs, and obviously this one is going to be big on it, is the licensing. So, someone owns their own ape, or like a toad, some of these, the CCO projects as well. What sort of difficulties have you found or come across or expect when doing this Storyverse project?
So it's funny you say that, because on the licensing, each project has their own approach to a license and what it means to own, whether or not it's a Clone X or a Pudgy Penguin or a Chain Runner, a Lazy Lion. They're all different, and you'd think that, given the fact that licensing and intellectual property, and ultimately many of these are like, this is intellectual property, you think that this would have been a problem that would have been recorded somewhere, or there would be some software that had been built to make it easier to understand what you can and can't do with your PFP. And it turned out is such an obvious problem that we assumed that the work had been done there. And it turns out the more research that we did, we found that it really wasn't obvious. And a lot of times people were not really aware of what they could and could not do with their particular assets. And so we said, look, we need to figure out how to turn all of the various approaches and legal terms for each of these projects. We need to codify that somewhere in software and make sure that folks who are using Storyverse publishing tools have the ability to use assets in a way in which is compliant with the terms laid out by each project. And so we've set out to create licensing protocol that makes it just really dead simple for folks to leverage the IP in a way in which is compliant. And so we love the idea. Well, I think if you look forward, if you said, okay, who owns certain PFPs and what are they going to do with them, right? So if you find someone who owns 35 Bored Apes, is that person, what are their motivations in the space? Are they itching to go out and create stories for some of their apes? Do they have an opinion that by virtue of having these stories, they may be able to increase the value of of an individual ape, et cetera? It's unclear. My guess is that folks, you have a bunch of different constituencies in the space. Some people are collectors, some people are traders, some people are creatives. There are a lot of different types of people, and we suspect that there will be a world where licensing really creates more access to PFPs. Not everybody can own a Bored Ape, but there may be plenty of people out there who are interested in actually writing a story about a Bored Ape. And so this is where licensing becomes really interesting.
Yeah, so if you, say, owned one of these plots, would you then, as you mentioned, like, say I own a plot, I don't own a Bored Ape, would I then sort of like rent or lease out my plot or my idea of a story, and then one of them can, come aboard, as they say, and connect with me that way? Is it kind of like a platform for creators to connect?
There are a couple of different ways in which we've been thinking about it and specking things out. So here would be an example. Let's say that I owned a Bored Ape, and I had no interest in creating a story, but I was interested in, and I own a Bored Ape and I own a plot. I could license out the my plot and attach a license to my ape to you, and you and I could share royalties on any revenue that you created through your storytelling. And so I could just sit back and take a royalty and provide almost like a landlord, right? And so, hey, Lou Dog loves writing. He's very creative type of guy, and he's inspired by this particular ape. I'm going to give him access to my plot. The plot has publishing tools, and I'm going to go ahead and stock my plot with some assets coming from my collection. Maybe there's an ape, maybe there's a lemon head, maybe there's a cool cat.
Yeah. So what kind of other publishing tools do you envision there to be through Storyverse?
So I think, I mean, the first iteration of publishing tools will be focused on the rigging, the animation, text-based conversations happening through caption bubbles. Many of the examples that I'm talking about can be seen now at storyverse.xyz. That's where our Genesis story lives. And then we also have additional stories that we've been publishing. Yesterday was punks.storyverse.xyz, apes.storyverse.xyz also exists, and so on. So, and you'll see there that it's really, you can create conversations, backdrops, props, etc. Over time, it would be super cool to add more multimedia, voice, music, etc. We'd love that idea. And then, of course, monetization is always very important to publishing, to folks creators who are publishing content. So the idea of making money in the Storyverse by publishing content is, we think, a real value add and a great publishing tool. So because we do think, I mean, if you look at the creator economy and folks have been able to turn publishing on, whether or not it's Instagram or Snap or TikTok, they can now make a living. And we hope that the Storyverse will be a place where creative people can make a living.
Yeah. So then when it comes to this idea of people owning their own plot of land and being able to earn off of it, is that going to be earned in like a Storyverse token, or will that be from Ethereum or another sort of sidechain or anything like that?
So we've been working on a token that helps fuel interactions and transactions in the Storyverse, and really the key touch points for that token. If you were a creator, you'd have the ability to earn tips from folks who had consumed your story and who really enjoyed it. You'd have the ability to earn tokens from this idea of voting your story into canon. If you think about the way the Bored Apes is a great example of a community where you have several bunch of different groups, right? You've got your cheetah gang, you've got your cowboy gang, etc. And so those folks each have differing opinions on what should be considered official lore. And we love the idea of letting people in the community use their dollars to determine what is official lore. And so when those votes are cast and stories are moved into and out of official lore, that the tokens that are spent to vote should actually then go toward the creator.
Yeah. So do you envision this to be something along the lines of other metaverses where people can sort of like walk around and end up in different plots? Or are you specifically going to be, I don't know if token gated is the correct word, but are people only going to have access to certain plots?
It's a good question. So the company that's incubating the Storyverse currently is called Playco, and Playco is the world's largest HTML5 game developer. And by HTML5 game development really is all about web-based, browser-based games. And so access is it's a it's more than just a sort of a noun for us. It's almost a philosophy where we
Mm.
think that low friction experiences win the day. We want to bring people together through gameplay, and we don't want them to have to go through a lot of friction. Don't want them to have to download an app. Don't want them to have to authenticate with at a company, etc. And so we think about access from, if you tap a link, you should be able to enter into an experience. Now, whether or not your wallet is connected in that experience and you want to participate in the tokenomics of the experience, that's a different question. But for the most part, the way we're thinking about it is, if Blue Dog, if you find a link in your messenger because a buddy sent it to you over WhatsApp or whatever, and you tap it, boom, you're in the Storyverse, and you can navigate from a traversability perspective. You can navigate left or right, sort of like if you were thumbing through the pages of a book. Or in some user experiences, you can view it as a table of contents. We have some grids that allow you to zero in on particular areas of the Storyverse because there are many plots. And so you may not want to start at page 1 and flip all the way to page 42,000 or whatever. But so you can navigate up and get a little bit more of a table of contents. But so the traversability, we really think of it as more like, the analogy would be more like a book. It's not like Second Life, or it's not like Sandbox from that perspective.
Yeah, so kind of like there's games on like the Oculus where like the story games, it's kind of more like that, I guess.
Yes.
Do you think that are people going to be able to build their own game on there as a story? Or do you think that's like way further down the line?
Oof, that's a really good
Probably.
question. It's a really good question. In the Storyverse, we probably are going to focus on interactive storytelling. We
Hmm.
consider that we certainly consider that a game genre. If you look at Sensor Tower, you can see that interactive storytelling drives about $500 million a year in the gaming space. So it's not a small category. And if you look on YouTube and measure the amount of consumption and sort of the posts on YouTube that are around games like Episode, Chapters, Chronicles, etc., it drives a lot of video views. So from that perspective, I think the Storyverse will probably play pretty close to interactive storytelling, at least for the foreseeable future. But what's interesting is that at Playco and in our Web3 endeavors, the stuff we're incubating, we definitely think a lot about other game genres, right? We in September of 2020, we actually acquired the team that built Pixie.js, which is one of the most successful HTML5 creation engines, one of the most successful projects on GitHub, 17 million projects, hundreds of thousands of developers, like a really massive presence and a very powerful developer community. And when we think about Web3 and the Storyverse, and we say, oh gosh, like, what other games could we play or could we build in this space? And how can we insert PFPs and other NFTs into more game genres? There's a lot there. We love thinking
Yeah.
about it. It's exciting.
Yeah. And then, I mean, that's obviously something that I feel like games have been a hot topic this year. And it just takes a lot to develop it and a lot of money involved in it. And, if Playka already has focus on games itself, then they don't necessarily have to um, do the games in the Storyverse itself. So let's go over some of the other partnerships that you guys have come out with. As you mentioned yesterday, you had Punks, and that was with Andy, friend of the show, and Josh Buckley was another one. Cosimo was on there. So, what other big partnerships are you guys happy that you've already had?
So we love when teaming up with the projects themselves on an official basis. There's no
Mm.
doubt about it. It's nice to get the nod from the project founders for sure. Um, and it just allows you to get a little bit more of a leveraged partnership. And so we really have been blown away by the Wonder Pals community.
Mhm.
Um, just their mission, sort of their philosophy in terms of what it is, like where they want to take, where the community wants to take things. It's really wonderful. It's very heartwarming, actually. And so we have a lot of respect for them, and their community blown us away with their level of engagement and participation. So that's been exciting. The chain runners, another group of folks who are just very lore based. And so we're very excited to be partnering with them, um, and so the Subducks and Frankie and Billy
Mhm.
over at Subducks have a really unique way of developing the lore for their community, and so it's been a very natural fit for us to team up with them. And then with some of the if you talk about like the punks, we've teamed up. The punks community is a little bit different than say the Subducks or the Cool Cats. It's a little bit more distributed, and the presence is not quite as centralized.
Mhm.
And so what we thought would be more interesting was to go straight to some punk holders, individual NFT holders, and work with them. And so Cosmo's been very supportive. Andy is just a stand-up guy. And Josh is actually a board member of our company at Playco, and so we tapped him on the shoulder and asked him, "Hey, man, were you interested in dropping in the story?" And he thought that would be fun. So um, yeah, and so those are the types of things that get us excited. We're just actually at the beginning, and
Um,
there's the roadmap. We start to think about, wow, there's a lot we could do here, even on the developer side of things. If we said, hey, what software can we go partner around? We can definitely build games and lots of software, but are there developers out there that we can start to say, hey, how can you enhance the platform in conjunction with us? How can we team up, strike an interesting partnership, get you guys involved, and ultimately deliver scalable value to the audience and the user base?
yeah. Yeah, it's always cool to see like the range as well of type of investor because obviously the punks are sort of that higher end range. Wonder Pals are a little lower end range. I know the chain runners also have like a range within their own investors. So that's the nice part about it is you're not really restricting people based on their holdings or anything like that. So I guess when we talk about these sort of next steps, what can people expect in the next few weeks out of Storyverse?
So in the next few weeks, you'll see more content coming online that's been created by our content and art teams. You'll start to see increased collaborations around content creation. We have this idea that well, I forget who, somebody inside the company said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did something along the lines of what Bob Ross used to do? I don't know if you recall Bob Ross. He was this artist. He would paint these landscapes on TV. He did it for 30 years. Just a really like easygoing, nice guy with big frizzy hair.
I have
And
a Bob Ross thing actually at my desk.
oh
My
yeah,
friend
yeah.
got it for me. It's like a little bobblehead.
Dude, whatever you do, don't go down the rabbit hole where you start watching Bob Ross's on
Oh
YouTube,
yeah.
because you may never come out. Um, so the idea that historically game developers, whether or not it's Activision Blizzard or Valve or whomever, they basically create games behind closed doors. Someone has a concept, they work on it for a long time, they invest $100 million or somewhere south of $100 million. They don't show anybody a whole lot, maybe a trailer here, a trailer there, but it's really up to the company, and the kimono is quite closed around that. And in Web3, it feels often like the product is actually product development. People want to be there and watch how the sausage is made. They want to provide input, they want to be able to impact the vision, and they want to see the process unfold. And so we said, hey, we're making these stories with our partners, whether or not they're individuals or whether or not they're projects. why don't we just involve the communities? This could be really fun. And so you'll start to see our art and content folks dropping into some Discord servers of some of our partner collections or projects, and working daily or every other day, taking input, grabbing feedback, helping, taking decisions from the folks in the discords, and then going back to their desk, doing the work, and then showing the community, in a couple of days, the fruits of their input. And so we feel like if it's the next stage in the evolution, right? If we started out seeding the ecosystem with what can be done with the tools that we have, and but we do it ourselves, and then okay, now let's go start work with people and in the communities. And then stage 3 would be, okay, now let's take the training wheels off. Here are the publishing tools.
Yeah.
Go forth and conquer.
Yeah, really growing that community aspect, getting people interested in the project and wanting to participate, because before you can actually use the publishing tools, you probably want to have the idea anyway. As far as the user themselves, is there any information yet that you could share on the mint itself? Any details on that?
I can share a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to give a specific date, because we're not exactly sure what the specific date is, but we're looking at mid-April for the mint, and the mint price is probably south of 0.08, south of that. These are directional numbers. And then in terms of, we haven't decided exactly how many plots we're going to release, but the number moves around, and if I told you today, then I would probably revise it tomorrow. Not intentionally, just haven't decided.
Yeah, no, that's fine as well, because I know, people like to just get a general idea of it, whether or not they're gonna buy in when they're thinking about these things on like what to get, because every day there's like all these mints going around, and just good idea of a sense of the market itself. Do you plan on? I've seen that some of these partnerships that you have, there's waitlist spots. Are there still opportunities for that for people that are listening?
Yes, there are. So we're basically running entry list giveaways every day for the next several days, trying to move it as close to the mint as possible and make sure we're including as many communities as we can. We're
Yeah.
also, doesn't necessarily, we have some really fun things coming out. We're game developers at the end of the day, and we have a game or two that we're gonna release probably this week, that folks will be able to participate, enjoy, and then maybe even include their PFP in the game. So pretty cool as a way to win an entry list spot. So by engaging with that, so.
Yeah, how do you think having a game development background is helping in the process of all this?
Well, building scalable technology is a massive undertaking, and so with that experience under our belt, it gives us number one, it gives us scalable technology that we already have that we can leverage. We can move very fast. Number two, you make a lot of mistakes when you're building a business, and so we've already made a ton of them, and so we know what pitfalls to avoid very often. We Look, at the end of the day, what's really fascinating here is that we really think that providing creators the ability to like unlock their own self-expression with assets that they own, we just think that that's going to usher in the next Mickey Mouse, the next Peppa Pig, the next Bart Simpson, and that gets us super pumped up. So from that perspective, it doesn't really matter right now. In our opinion, we love the Bored Apes, we love the CryptoPunks, with Ozukis, these projects that have managed to like really knock it out of the park. They're incredibly impressive, and they're run by smart teams, and they're very talented. But there could be some 16-year-old kid sitting in her mom's basement in the suburbs outside of Perth, Australia, who's just an incredibly talented artist, with the written word and with multimedia, and she may have a PFP that she picked up for 0.02 ETH, and all of a sudden she starts making interactive storytelling games on the Storyverse platform and finds an audience. And the next thing you know, she's turned that PFP that she bought for nickels, not quite nickels, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
into a global sensation. That level of, um, the ability to unlock that level of self-expression and creativity and deliver it to the world, we think is just, that's very exciting. That's what gets us up in the morning.
Yeah, other ways for, like, creators basically to have a part in the space, have a voice, and be able to make those real life connections. So, would you say the best way to get involved is to join the Discord, or just following on Twitter and that sort of thing?
I think those are great ways to start. I'd love for everybody who's listening to participate in some of the events that we have coming up on that. We typically rerun them off of our Twitter account, which is at storyverse_xyz, and some fun games and some competitions, etc. Keep your eyes out for those. Also, try to snag an entry list spot for one of the many giveaways that we have slated over the next several days to week. And then, yeah, once the plots are out, for those folks who grab a plot, start thinking about, hey, what, how's that PFP come to life, or team up with someone who has a plot, figuring out how to get in there. So
Yeah, that's a good idea, like a way to sort of team up. Um, or two people can go in on a plot together or something like that. So then for this entry list, do you expect most of the mints to come out of that, or about half of it? Like, what's sort of the, I don't want to say need to get onto that list, but is it going to be a good chunk of the overall plots coming from there?
I think directionally speaking, we're looking at a little bit over half of the mint will be folks who have entry list spots.
Okay, over about half. Yeah, that's good, because I know that that's one thing some projects we've had on, it's all from there, or it's, basically all, and then it becomes like a gas war at the end to get a part of it. And will that be one spot each of those entries, or do you think it'll be more than that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
If you are on the entry list, will you be able to mint more than one with that spot, or just one?
You just meant one per entry list.
Okay. And is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to make sure that you did on this pod?
I mean, I think we covered a lot. I think we
Yeah,
covered it all, Ludwig.
yeah. Because I know in our back and forth before, we talked about um, most of these items as well. How big is the team involved alongside you?
I think right now we have about, inside of the Playco, inside of Playco, which is the company that's incubating this. I think we're dedicating around 20 people to the
Okay.
initiative. And
Okay.
that's anybody from me who's working on some business stuff, to our community team, to the product team, to the content team, the art team, and then of course the engineering team. And it's global. And I liked when at the beginning, the GMGAGE, we say that because our company is fully remote.
Yeah.
We sort of, at the beginning of the pandemic, we just decided to go ahead and grab the bull by the horns and get ahead of trends and say, okay, from this point forward, we're fully remote. So a lot of folks from a lot of parts of the world doing a lot of great work.
Yeah, that's the beauty of NFTs. And I talk that on a lot of these pods is, even just let's say from Bored Apes, like you're in the Bored Ape Discord and they have all these channels with different languages and people can own it from basically anywhere in the world, as far as depending on regulations and stuff like that. But which obviously we don't have to get into any of that, but, that's sort of the beauty of this is you can live halfway across the world from someone, but still interact with them in this Storyverse, and maybe that's the person that's on your you team up with someone who's halfway across the world, which I think that's the beauty of the Web3 space in general. So are you guys planning on going to any events coming up? I know the big one in June is NFT NYC. I know there's been some other ones with the South by Southwest and VCon, things like that. Are you guys planning at any of those events?
We will be at NFT at NYC for sure. And then the other ones are TBD. I mean, obviously, I know some of those that you
Yeah,
mentioned have passed, but for now, the one that we definitely have circled on the calendar is NFT NYC. VCon, we do not have on the schedule right now, but we do talk to Vayner NFT. We know the folks over there, and I know Avery and Sebastian, and they're wonderful and supportive. So really appreciate them. And I don't know, I have to think about it. As
yeah,
a company, we're not actually traveling,
yeah,
so there's a little bit of tension there. But as a company, like, the policy currently is still not doing a lot of traveling. So
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I know um, a lot of big brands are coming out and going to these events now. Obviously, the NFT LA last week was like a big one, and it's a cool way to, as mentioned before, like you're interacting with these people online, but then to meet them in person after spending months talking to them over Discord or emails even. So it's always cool to see when teams break out and go to those things. So yeah,
is
is there? Oh, go ahead.
it well, isn't it funny? It's not that different than PFPs themselves, right? Like, you talk to somebody every day over Zoom, and you really have no idea how tall they are, right? Whether or not they have skinny legs, that
Mm,
type of thing. And I think what we're realizing in the Storyverse is that no one knows what a punk's body looks like, right? Or
yeah,
maybe one punk owner thinks his punk should look this way, and another punk owner thinks his punk should look that way. So that type of stuff is really interesting. I think from the you had mentioned about collaborating globally, and that's something that I've always thought. For me personally, my career has always been sort of to collaborate globally through almost every part of my career. And so within the Storyverse, we like to think about the analogy maybe being that we are sort of like Substack, and that
mm,
we're giving creators the ability, publishing tools that they can turn around and turn into a business. But then there's a component there where it's almost like Google Slides as well, right? So if you think about Google Slides, you can collaborate with several people working on the document at the same
yeah,
time or asynchronously, and they can access things like panels or slides. They can get caption bubbles. They can add text. They can change fonts. They can change colors of the background, etc. And so this convergence of collaborators building somewhere between Substack meets Google Slides meets Cartoon Network, right? Becomes pretty interesting for us.
yeah. Cool. And then is there? do you want to plug your own Twitter at all or anything like that if they want to connect with you? No.
If
Just follow
listen, I mean,
Storyverse.
so the best way to reach me is through the at storyverse_xyz. For those of you that are interested, I have my Twitter account is at Elko Druthers, ELKODRUTHERS. And we are, I will say that, we're growing and we're always on the lookout for talented Web3 engineers, product people, and folks who are excellent at community development and management. So feel
Cool.
free to reach out if you want. If you've got some ideas in terms of how to make the project more successful, or have some feedback and help us understand why the project is not headed in the right direction. We're totally open to feedback. We think it's a gift. So
Cool. Yeah, and I encourage people to go on storyverse.xyz. I'm throwing that in the notes as well on this video. And it's a cool little interface. And you go on and you get told a story. You can go on that Punk's version, as you mentioned before, and see the Punk story and just get a sense of sort of what it could look like. And as you mentioned, like, what does it look like for punks with a body? I think one cool part to it, which I think will come out of this, is a lot of people will probably dress it up similar how they would envision themselves dressed up. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing it. So definitely follow them on Twitter. You'll get a lot of updates on there, especially with like the partnerships. It seems like every day you guys have a different partnership that you're announcing. So it's cool to see that. And then yeah. And if you guys have any other questions, you can leave them in the comments of this video, and we can let you guys know as well through the Discord. That's probably the best way to get just talking about the actual project with other people interested in investing. So um, if there's nothing else, I'll leave you guys with that. And then we'll be back here to Thursday with a couple different shows in our regular Lucky Trader Lounge. So it was nice having you on today. Hopefully we'll be able to chat with you further in the future. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys
awesome.
next
Yeah,
time.
thanks so much, Lou Dog. Yep, bye now.